So first, I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining Research Nova Scotia's information session for the new Health Investigator Grant competition. My name is Megan Belfontaine. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the manager of research support here at Research Nova Scotia. And I will be your host for today's event. So before we start this afternoon, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Research Nova Scotia is in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This land is governed by the treaties of peace and friendship that were struck in 1725 and 26 that have established a long-standing relationship between the nations. We are all treaty people. I also want to recognize that the people of African descent who have lived and contributed to Nova Scotia have been here for more than 400 years. So before we start, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. First, we will ask that you please enter any questions into the Q&A section found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You may enter questions at any time during the presentation, and either my colleague, Trish Cormier, who's also here on the line, or I will do our best to answer the questions at the end of the webinar, or Trish will be kind of looking at it as we go along. Second, I'll note that today's webinar is being recorded and will be available along with copies of the webinar slides on the Research Nova Scotia website tomorrow morning. With that, I will turn off my video and we will get started. All right, so today's webinar will cover a variety of topics, including a brief introduction to Research Nova Scotia, an overview of the new Health Investigator Grant, the application and review process for your Notice of Intent, otherwise referred to as an NOI submission, and finally, we'll have a short Q&A session. The Research Nova Scotia was founded in 2019 to support, organize, and coordinate research in our province. Our research strategy has been organized into 4 areas: improved quality of life for Nova Scotians, healthy people and healthcare systems, climate change adaptation and resilience, and sustainable bioeconomy. These areas represent some of the most pressing needs of the province. Each area is made up of 4 corresponding missions, which help to give shape to the ways research can contribute to achieving progress for Nova Scotia. This mission-oriented approach to research means that we start with what we want to accomplish and build a research agenda and coalition of partners and projects to help achieve these goals. We seek to support creativity, diversity, and ingenuity in the research community's responses to our mission challenges. As mentioned, Research Nova Scotia often works with partner agencies to develop opportunities to help us achieve our shared goals. The New Health Investigator Grant is one of these opportunities. Funding for the New Health Investigator Grant is provided by the Nova Scotia Department of Health and Wellness. Each year, senior management of the department determines the research priorities, and it is upon them that we build this competition. The same process has been followed this time around, with a slightly different outcome. These priorities were based on the Action for Health, which is the strategic plan the government has created to address challenges in the healthcare system. The priorities for this year's competition are research that contributes to recruitment and retention of healthcare professionals, research focused on access to people-centered, flexible, and quality healthcare, research contributing to healthcare delivery excellence, including opportunities for team-based care, the ability of healthcare providers to work to their full scope of practice, and innovative models to reduce wait times, research that addresses factors affecting health and well-being of Nova Scotians, including emerging issues in population health and harm reduction, and research that demonstrates the potential to have an impact on the healthcare system. You will likely notice that this list does not include biomedical priorities. Therefore, Research Nova Scotia will not be inviting or accepting applications on biomedical topics this year. All submissions for the New Health Investigator NOI must clearly address at least one of the 5 priorities listed. The 2023-24 New Health Investigator Grant supports early career health researchers who are engaged in research that is focused on the efficient and effective delivery of healthcare to Nova Scotians. The grant will provide up to $100,000 over 2 years for researchers who are within the first 5 years of their academic appointment to Nova Scotia or who are new to the field of health research. Funding provided will support the establishment of independent programs of research, support and expand the research productivity necessary for obtaining long-term funding from national and external agencies, and expand the potential for early career investigators to make significant contributions to the field. As mentioned, funding for this grant is provided by the Nova Scotia Department of Health and Wellness. We have implemented 5 changes for this year's competition that you should be aware of. First, all grants submitted to Research Nova Scotia must be accompanied by a completed equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility self-declaration form. Second, this is the first year we are hosting a live webinar today, which is discussing the new Health Investigator Grant. Third, we will be making some changes to the peer review process. In addition to providing expertise in content, program delivery, and research methodology, achieving gender balance and institutional regional representation, the scientific peer review committees will strive to achieve cultural diversity and may include reviewers with niche expertise based on the proposals received. Fourth, in order to align with tri-agency standards, Research Nova Scotia will adjust the eligibility window for eligible leaves of absence, such as illness, maternity, or parental, for early career researchers, such that they will be credited at twice the amount of time taken. Finally, as mentioned, due to the priorities set out by our government partners, Research Nova Scotia will not be accepting applications focused on biomedical research this year. So with that, we'll now start to dive a little bit deeper into the eligibility criteria for this grant opportunity. First, to apply for the new Health Investigator Grant, the applicant must meet one of the following criteria. They may be an early career health researcher within the first 5 years of a first-time academic or research appointment at a Nova Scotia university or college, or have an appointment with a research responsibilities at an affiliated hospital, or they may be a health researcher who has moved to Nova Scotia within the last 5 years, or who has returned to Nova Scotia after an absence of at least 5 years, and who holds an academic or research appointment at a Nova Scotia university or college, or an appointment with research responsibilities at an affiliated hospital. Or finally, they may be a researcher who is new to the field of health research and has undergone a career transition within the past 5 years and holds an academic or research appointment at a Nova Scotia university or college, or an appointment with research responsibilities at an affiliated hospital. I will note that for early career researchers only, so just those in this first category here, the 5-year window will be adjusted to account for instances where a researcher has an eligible delay in research. Eligible leaves, such as illness, maternity, parental, or bereavement, are credited at twice the amount of time taken. Professional leave, such as training, sabbatical, or administrative leaves, will not be credited. For those in these 2 categories here, so for health researchers who are new to Nova Scotia, or those who have undergone a career transition, any eligible leaves of absence will be credited at the same amount of time taken. So the second eligibility requirement is that during the full duration of the grant, all grant holders must reside in Nova Scotia, work at a Nova Scotia institution, and maintain an academic appointment. Third, current establishment grant and/or new Health Investigator Grant holders may be eligible to apply, but the end date of the grant must be prior to December 31st, 2023. Finally, the primary applicant must have an eligible academic or research appointment. I'll go into this in a little bit more detail on the next slide. So for the purposes of the new Health Investigator Grant, Research Nova Scotia considers the following to be academic appointments: any tenured appointments, tenure track appointments, or probationary tenure track appointments, research scientist appointments, limited term appointments. But I will quickly note that applicants with a limited term appointment, while they are eligible to apply, if they are funded, the applicants will be asked to provide institutional confirmation that their term end date is after the estimated grant completion date. Also, we will consider affiliated scientists, medical staff, or other appointments or affiliations approved by senior officials, such as a CEO or a VP research, to be eligible academic appointments. Adjunct positions and instructor positions will not be considered academic appointments. If there are any questions regarding your eligibility, I will ask that you contact Trish Cormier, who is our research support officer, at the email address found at the end of this presentation. So as noted, Research Nova Scotia is mandated to support research that reflects the provincial health research priorities. All of them must address one or more of the priorities that we've discussed earlier in this presentation and are once again listed here. New Health Investigator Grant award holders may be awarded up to $50,000 per year for up to 2 years. It's also important to note that all grants are subjected to a 10% financial holdback. All NOI applications must be submitted through Research Nova Scotia's Jura system by 1 p.m. Atlantic time on Wednesday, June 28th, 2023. Jura will not allow submissions that come in after this time, and any application not submitted by this date and time will be marked ineligible for consideration. We strongly recommend that you do not leave your submission to the last minute. Technical errors, computer shutdowns often occur at the worst possible moments, and unfortunately, we're unable to make exceptions under any circumstances. So once you've submitted the NOI, they will all undergo a first round of review. We anticipate that invitations to a full application will go out in July 2023. For those invited to submit a full application, the application deadline will be September 20th, 2023, and final funding decisions will be available in December 2023, with funding available to start in January 2024. So now that we've got that all out of the way, we have the big question of how do you actually apply for the award? The first thing you have to do is to confirm your eligibility criteria. Be sure that you review the criteria mentioned earlier in this presentation and ensure that you're eligible for the award. Applicants who do not meet the eligibility criteria will be deemed ineligible and will not be able to move forward in the competition. The criteria can be found on the Research Nova Scotia website, in this slide deck, and embedded on the online application form. As I mentioned, if there are any questions regarding eligibility, please contact Trish, and her email will be at the end of this presentation. Second, you must reach out to your institution to confirm any internal deadlines. All NOI submissions must undergo institutional review and receive approval before they will be considered by Research Nova Scotia. Applicants must connect with their research office well in advance of the submission deadline to confirm any internal deadlines and process. So once you've done that, we will want to register for a Jura account. Jura is Research Nova Scotia's online grant management portal, and all applications must be submitted through this portal. As a first step, you'll want to navigate to Jura from the Research Nova Scotia website, select the For Researchers dropdown, and click on Jura Login. Alternatively, you may select the Funding Opportunities page from the For Researchers section of the website, scroll down until you see the New Health Investigator Grant opportunity, click Learn More, and select Login to apply. Once you reach the Jura homepage, you may log in using existing system credentials, say if you've applied for a previous award from Research Nova Scotia, or if you're new to the system, click the Register button to sign up. So if you didn't have an existing account, this is where you will be brought for your registration. So once you're on the registration page, you will first need to look up your organization. This should be the organization at which you have your eligible academic appointment. If you select the wrong organization at sign up, please just reach out to our Jura help desk and we'll be happy to help resolve the issue. When entering the name of your organization, a drop-down box with all matching entries will appear. Be sure to select the entry from this pop-up box in order to properly associate your account with the organization. Next, you will complete the contact information section. Please note that all sections marked with an asterisk are required. Finally, you will complete the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Self-Declaration. EDIA strengthen the research community and the quality, social relevance, and impact of research. EDIA-informed analyses, systems, and practices ensure barriers faced by underrepresented or disadvantaged groups are identified and addressed, which in turn enhances the integrity of application and selection processes, strengthen research outputs, and increase the overall excellence of research. All information provided to Research Nova Scotia will be kept strictly confidential and will not be shared with third parties. If you do not wish to self-identify, you have the option to select Prefer Not to Say for each question. You must select one of those options to save your responses for your questionnaire to be marked as complete. Doing so fulfills the mandatory requirement for completing the EDIA self-declaration. You may change your answers to these questions at any time by following the instructions outlined in the How to Complete an EDIA Self-Declaration in Jura document on the new Health Investigator landing page on the Research Nova Scotia website. Once all your fields are complete, you'll want to hit the Submit button to create your account in Jura. Shortly after submitting, you'll receive an automated email from Smart Simple with a link to set your password. Once your password is set, you will need to agree to the Jura privacy policy and terms of use and will be redirected to your user homepage. As noted earlier in the presentation, EDIA self-declaration is required of all applications. For users who have an existing Jura account, they will first need to log into the system with their existing credentials. Click on the personal profile link that's located on their homepage, and finally select the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Accessibility tab. As with the previous options for new users, if you do not wish to self-identify, you will have the option to say Prefer Not to Say for each question. Once again, you must select one of these options in order for the questionnaire to be complete in order to submit your new Health Investigator Grant application. So now that you've successfully registered for your Jura account, the first thing you'll want to do is to start working on your application. So from your Jura homepage, you will select the Funding Opportunities section. From here, select the New Health Investigator Grant opportunity and click Apply Now to launch your application. Before you begin your application, you will need to click the Save Draft button. Doing so will assign a unique application number in the system and will allow you to return to your application at any time. Next, you want to navigate to the various sections of the application using the tabs located at the top of your screen. All questions marked with an asterisk are mandatory. And I will also note that Jura will not automatically save any of your progress. So we recommend that you save frequently in order to avoid losing your work and to enable you to return to your working on your application at a later date. In subsequent sessions, you can find your draft application in the In Progress Application section of your Jura homepage. While working on your application, you must follow the guidelines for this opportunity. I cannot stress this enough. This will be your guiding star while you are completing your application. The detailed guidelines document can be found on the Research Nova Scotia website, on the new Health Investigator landing page, downloaded here. So we have the NOI guidelines. We also have an NOI application checklist, which will help you know that you've completed all of the pieces that we need. You'll also find a copy of these guidelines at the top of your application in Jura, and we strongly recommend that you take the time to read the guidelines thoroughly in order to set your application up for success. So speaking of setting your application up for success, there are a few areas of the application where there's often confusion, some uncertainty. So I just want to take a few moments to dedicate this webinar to provide some additional clarification around the CV submission and the project alignment description. First, we'll look at the CV submission. All applicants must submit an up-to-date, validated PDF version of a common CV in either the CIHR academic or CIHR project biosketch type. We recommend that you start this process early, especially if you are new to the CCV system, as it can take some time to receive your PIN and enter all of the required information. Any questions related to the CCV system should be directed to the CIHR centralized help desk at any of these contact information listed here. Next, we'll look at the project alignment description submission requirements. The project alignment description should be the main focus of your NOI submission. This document must provide a clear and concise description of the proposed research project that includes a description of the issue or topic to be researched, the overall project objectives and a research question, demonstration of the project alignment with the research priorities for this competition, which have been detailed earlier in this presentation, information on how proposed research will utilize relevant demographic and epidemiological data, and demonstration of the potential impact of the delivery of healthcare in Nova Scotia. Applicants are also reminded that the submission must adhere to the formatting guidelines. That is, it must be in PDF format, it cannot exceed 2 pages, must be in 11-point black font with 1.5 line spacing and 1/2-inch margins. Finally, I will mention that the NOI submission will be reviewed by a committee comprised of representatives from the Department of Health and Wellness. This committee will determine whether the proposed project topic aligns with the research priorities. As such, the project alignment description should be written for a non-scientific and non-specialized audience. Once your application is complete and ready for submission, we recommend that you review the PDF overview that can be downloaded by clicking on the NOI summary button. It is strongly recommended that you review this carefully before submission to ensure the information provided is accurate and appears correctly, as this is the version of the submission that we provided to the review committee for consideration. Should you choose not to move forward with the competition, you may also withdraw your application at any point before the deadline by clicking the withdraw button. When your proposal is ready for submission, click the submit button at the bottom of your form. You will receive a confirmation email and the submission will be viewable under the submitted applications section of your JURA homepage. If you try to submit an application without completing one of the mandatory fields, you will receive a submission failed message that will direct you to correct the information in your application. This may also include an error message if you did not complete your EDIA self-declaration. If this is the case, you will need to follow the steps outlined earlier in this presentation or in Appendix A of the competition guidelines to complete this declaration in your JURA personal profile. We encourage you to submit your application as early as possible to ensure that technical errors such as these do not prevent the submission of your application on time. The final step in the NOI application process is obtaining your institutional approval. All submissions must receive institutional approval before the application deadline. This process is completed via an institutional representative in JURA. These representatives may also request changes to your submission before they will approve it for Research Nova Scotia's review. So again, make sure that you reach out to them so that you're aware of any internal processes and deadlines that your particular institution may have. So once the submission deadline has passed, the new Health Investigator NOI review process starts with Research Nova Scotia's eligibility check. Research Nova Scotia staff will assess the applications to determine whether they are complete and meet the eligibility criteria. Applications that do not meet basic administrative eligibility criteria for the competition will be marked as ineligible and not provided to the Department of Health and Wellness Committee for consideration. Next, eligible NOI submissions will be reviewed by a committee comprised of representatives from the Department of Health and Wellness. This committee will determine whether the proposed project topic aligns with the research priorities. Finally, Research Nova Scotia will notify applicants of all of the NOI status decisions and will invite successful applicants to submit a full application for consideration. So hopefully this webinar has provided you with answers to most of your questions. However, I want to take a few final moments to address a few of the frequently asked questions. The first is, am I able to submit multiple proposals as the primary applicant? So no, applicants may only submit one proposal as the primary or co-primary applicant. Applicants may, however, act as the co-investigator on multiple proposals. I will also note that co-primary applicants must meet the same eligibility criteria as the primary applicant who is submitting the proposal. So am I able to include citations to my notice of intent submission? Yeah, absolutely, yes. Applicants may include in-text citations in their project alignment description and should also upload these citations in the attachment section of their application. Applicants should, however, keep in mind that the NOI submissions will be reviewed by a committee of government representatives and should be written for a non-scientific audience. As such, citations are not required for your NOI submission. So in terms of eligibility, our leaves of absence calculated to the length of an academic appointment. So just to clarify this one, for early career researchers, eligible leaves of absence will be considered at twice the amount of time taken. For those who are new to Nova Scotia or to the field of health research, eligible leaves of absence will be considered the same amount of time taken. So you might still be confused. So you're wondering, who do you contact for help? So if you require any help with your application, please do not hesitate to reach out to the appropriate person listed here. So for any technical issues, reach out to our Jura help desk. For any issues with your Canadian Commons CV, it'll be the CCV centralized help desk. And any other application support, eligibility questions can be directed to Trish. So that wraps up the formal part of my presentation. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to join us for today's webinar, and we'll now open the floor to questions. And as a reminder to please type any questions into the Q&A feature here on Zoom. And if we don't get to your question before the end of the session, I will do my best to reach out via email after this webinar. Here, we're happy to help with any questions that you may have. All right, hope everyone has a great afternoon.